Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to build a content calendar from scratch in Tana. What we're going to do is that I'm going to take you through everything from building the super tags, the fields, the live searches from scratch. We're going to start from nothing, and at the end you're going to have a super powerful template to create content and schedule it using Tana's new calendar view feature. Now what we're going to do is that I'm going to take you to my Tana workspace where I'm going to set this up, and then we're off to the races. Now what we need to do first is kind of think about what we need as super tags. So where I start my content calendaring and my content system is with a super tag that I call a content kernel, right? And that is wherever inspiration strikes, whether I'm reading a book and under a quote or some other place, just having an idea and tagging that as a content kernel is the first super tag that I have in my content system. So to collect all of these things that we're going to need, what we're going to do here is I'm going to create a section, super tags, and under this section is where we're going to put all the things we need for our content calendar system. So as I said, content kernel. And under this section is where we're going to put all the things we need for our content calendar system. We might have Twitter threads, we might have YouTube videos, newsletter issues, and blog articles. One thing you can do in Tana is that you have super tags inherit from a common super tag. And the benefit that this has is that you can later look for all the types of content and turn up everything, even though it might be a Twitter thread or a YouTube video, it's still going to show up. So what we're going to do is first create a content super tag and then super tags for everything else. That's going to be our main super tags for the types of content, right? We have the content itself, we have Twitter threads, YouTube videos, newsletter issues, and blog articles. And finally, what we need is something that I call a content campaign, right? So sometimes you have a larger theme across multiple different pieces of content that you want to steer towards a particular end, right? So you have maybe a product launch or something where you want to publish kind of on the same theme across a couple of days or even weeks. And to organize all of that, I'm going to have a tag content campaign here. Now in Tana, what we can do, we can create multiple super tags in one go by just selecting all of these bullet points here and then hitting Command K and then convert to super tag. Now all of these are super tags, and what we're going to do to make this a proper template and have it in a central location is that we're going to hit Command K again and then bring reference nodes here. So that means they're not sitting in the schema, but they are here directly indented under the super tags node so that we have them all in one place and we can look and see how they relate to each other. Next, what we want to create are a couple of special fields that we're going to use. And so for that, I'm going to create a new section here, kind of fields under which we're going to put all the fields that we're going to use and reuse in our super tags. And the first one is for our content and our different types of content, and we're going to create a field called production status, right? Because we want to be able to track our production status across these different pieces of content. The next field that we're going to need is a field called planned publication date, and then we're going to have another field that's just going to be the date field that we're going to add to the super tag so that we can track kind of when things are supposed to be published and when they're finally published. So let me add the publication date field here. So let's start configuring here the different types of content. So what we need to do is we're going to need to extend the Twitter thread and YouTube video super tags, and they're going to extend the content super tag that we have created here, right? And we're going to do that for Twitter thread, and we're going to do that for a YouTube video, newsletter issue, and blog article as well. Now, because all of these different types of content have certain things in common, like the production status and the planned publication date field, we're going to go ahead and configure this in the content field itself. So here what we're going to add is planned publication date, and we're going to put production status into this, and then date, and here we're going to use the system field date. Now, the planned publication date field, what we need to do here is we're going to make this a date field, and that will make it so that we can show it in the calendar, as I'm going to show you later on in the video. And the production status field, we're going to make an options field. And here I'm going to add a couple of options. And so the options that I have just added are just an idea: researching, writing, filming, editing, ready to publish, and scheduled, and then published as individual options. Now, another neat thing that we're going to add is a special field that tells us from which content kernel a piece of content is derived, right? And for this, I'm going to create a new field here, stems from, and this field we're going to configure to be an instance field, where the instance is a content kernel. And then in the content super tag, we're going to add this as well, stems from. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to create a reverse search for this in the content kernel super tag. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a field, derived content, and into this field we're going to put a live search, derived content, and then we're going to hit Command K, search, create search node, and here we're going to look for all pieces of content where stems from is grandparent. And just as a quick example, we're going to put content kernel into this graph here. And we're going to tag that as content kernel, and actually, and then I'm going to create a Twitter thread, and Twitter threads we're going to make blue. And I set stems from to something cool. What happens is that in the derived content, we'll see, okay, I've already created a Twitter thread that deals with this content kernel, with this idea that I've had, right? And that makes it, as you create more content about certain things that you have, really easy to see, okay, and did I think about this before? Have I published anything about this before? And collect all of that in one place automatically, so that you can use and reuse and come up with new ways of framing a single content kernel, a single idea. So that's already super useful. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the content campaign super tag. And what we need for the content campaign is, again, a field content campaign, and that's going to be, again, an instance field of the super tag content campaign, and we're going to make content campaign red. And then we're going to add this content campaign field to every piece of content again. Content campaign. And that allows us to, for any piece of content, assign it to a specific content campaign, right? So if I create a product launch content campaign, right, I can say, okay, this Twitter thread belongs to the content campaign of product launch, right? And then here, again, I can add a field similar to the derived content and say here for content campaign, what we're going to do is campaign content. We're going to add a search again, create search node, and we're searching for any piece of content where content campaign is grandparent, right? And boom, and I expand this, and now I know, okay, this Twitter thread or any other piece of content is supposed to belong to this content campaign. And that makes it really easy to structure your content for certain purposes. Now, so far what we've done is we've looked at creating kind of the kernels, the ideas for content. Then we created a couple of pieces of content, right? Concepts for Twitter threads, YouTube videos, and what have you. And we created a super tag to orchestrate these over time, if you will, right? To have them all belong to a centralized push that is going to go into one direction, that is going to have a certain topic, kind of provides us the building blocks to now have a flowing content system. But of course, any content system creates content over time. And so that's where we're going to use Tana's new calendar view feature. And we're going to build a couple of dashboards and live searches where we can really orchestrate content over time and do that in a really easy yet powerful way. So let's jump into that, and I'm going to show you how that works. Now, as I said, the content campaign super tag is there so that you have a way to structure all your content across time to drive it towards one purpose, right? That can be super useful, obviously. So what we want to do is take Tana's calendar view feature and use that to help us structure the content across time. How do we do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the content campaign super tag, and I'm going to create a live search here. And that live search we might call campaign calendar, right? I think that makes sense. And this campaign calendar, we're going to turn into a search node, create search node. And here is we're going to look for any piece of content where content campaign is parent. And this is basically the same as the campaign content live search here, but for illustration purposes, I think it makes sense to have the campaign calendar functionality broken out into its own live search here for easier viewing. Now, with that, we're going to close this, and here we have the campaign calendar. Now, what we're going to do is here under view, we're going to choose calendar view. And that gives us the monthly view and one node with no date. Some cool Twitter thread does not have any date information in here yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and set the planned publication date, and we're going to set that for today, and boom, it shows up here on Thursday as some cool Twitter thread. Now, the amazing thing is that Tana actually takes every date field and applies it differently, right? So if I go in here and say the actual publication date was yesterday, right? So I'm planned it for today, but I actually got around to and published it yesterday, it shows up here in the calendar twice. And that's super useful because now I can drag the planned publication date around here. And you don't see this visually which field it actually is that is displayed, but I think that's fine. But you can now drag the respective nodes here in the calendar around and it works seamlessly. And the same actually counts when you create new pieces of content here. So if I want to create a new piece of content, I just click into Tuesday and say, create YouTube video, and you see the content tag gets applied automatically. I can say this is actually a YouTube video, and I'm going to remove the content, and it still appears here, and it has the color of the tag that you apply to. Right now it's red because this belongs to content campaign, but if I set YouTube video here to orange, for example, then down here the node gets turned into the tag color, right? And that makes it super easy to distinguish, okay, here's where my YouTube videos are, here's where my Twitter threads are, and all of that. You've also seen here that you can switch between different views, right? I can switch to the week view, and I can scroll through the different weeks here, and you see I can actually schedule these with more granularity than just the date, right? So if I put some cool Twitter thread here, the date Wednesday, April 5th, but if I drag this down from up there to 2 p.m., for example, the date field automatically gets adjusted and it shows you the precise time. That is super useful because, of course, you want to schedule your Twitter threads for a certain time, and then you know when you publish them. And for any other type of scheduling activity, like if you were planning your projects and tasks or your workday, for example, you could obviously add this just the same and use the calendar view for that. Also, if you select any event, if you click this expand icon here, that takes you directly to the piece of content in this case, and it lets you work in it. And if you go back, and that takes you back to the previous view. You also see here this day goes from midnight to midnight, basically. If you want to see less of that, you can select day length here, and then you can say, okay, I just want, like, I'm not working before 6 and I'm not going to work after 10, and that is then going to shrink the days node, the day view here from 6 a.m. to 10 in the evening. You can, of course, also create events that span multiple days, right? So if I say, okay, I want to have a piece of content that spans all of this, more likely to happen if you use a project for this or something, then you can do that as well. New super long content, and now the planned publication date goes from April 4th to April 7th, right? Especially in this example, if you don't really care when exactly it happens, you can say, okay, show me this on multiple days so that I know on one of these days is when I want to release this. Now, of course, what you can do is you can filter this even more, right? Because this is a live query. So if our Twitter thread, for example, had a production status of researching, I could go into the live query here and say, okay, show me all of the content that is where the production status is researching, right? And that would mean I'm now only seeing this particular Twitter thread, and I'm not seeing the YouTube video anymore, for example. And that also shows you, okay, there's a couple of things still in motion, and I want you to look at these coherently. So that allows you to do that using the live search feature. And of course, we can also add this to the macro structure of content campaigns themselves, right? So if we add the date system field here. And what this does is that it lets me plan my content campaigns across time, right? So I can say this content campaign goes from April 1st to April 30th. We're going to add all of April. And now if I'm looking at a live search for all my content campaigns, I can plan these as well, right? So content campaigns, create a search node, and we're looking for any content campaign. We're viewing this as a calendar as well. And here you see product launch moves over all of April, and then I can create a new one for the start of May. New campaign post-launch, right? And now I have another content campaign that I can work in, and I can expand this and start adding campaign content, look at the calendar. And so you have different ways of structuring your content across time and always having a good overview of what's going on. And naturally, if you want just a complete coverage content calendar, that's very easy as well. Content calendar, create a search node, look for all of the content, right? Show that as a calendar, and everything shows up, right? And that gives you a great overview of what you have planned coming up in the next couple of weeks. If you don't want to do all the manual work, you can also just download and import the template into your Tana workspace. I've linked that down below. It's completely free. Just import it and you're ready to go. If you want to learn how to build your own Supertag systems like this, check out my course Mastering Tana Core, which I've also linked down below. And if you want a super encompassing template that covers everything for note-taking and project management that you might use in your day-to-day life, check out TANARIAN Brain, which is also linked down below. And I hope to see you in the next video, and until then, have a good one. Bye bye.